Hello. When Trouble in Pairs was taken off of the Game Changers list, I had a feeling that it would go up in price. And it did, just by a little bit. It went up from a $20 card to a $23 card because people realized that they could just add it into their deck. Trouble in Pairs is a card that I really like because it gets better when you're playing at high power levels. So if you're playing, just precons, it's not going to do too much. But when your opponents are doing a lot, when they're playing multiple spells a turn, when they're drawing multiple cards a turn, that's where Trouble in Pairs really shines. But it's still a $20+ card, though. And I like Mangara the Diplomat. And this one was recently reprinted in the Dragonstorm Commander decks, and so the price is at an all-time low for it. It's like 50 cents. And it does most of what Trouble in Pairs can do. Trouble in Pairs lets you draw a card whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, plays their second spell, or draws 2 or more cards. You get to draw a card. And so Mangara the Diplomat, he lets you draw a card whenever somebody attacks you with 2 or more creatures, or whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn. You get to draw a card. So the only thing it doesn't really do is let you draw off of other people drawing extra cards. I think that Mangara is still worth considering, especially if you are running ways to tutor him out. Because he's a creature, he's going to be easier to tutor than an enchantment, easier to recur than an enchantment. You can do like turn 3 Imperial Recruiter into turn 4 Mangara the Diplomat and just have him refill your hand as your opponents are casting multiple spells, and also deters people from attacking you. So yeah, I think it's, in many cases, just as good as Trouble in Pairs. I mean, the stopping people from taking extra turns is very niche, and I don't know how often that's going to be relevant in a game, but I think for the main ways you'd want to use him are going to be similar to how you'd want to use Trouble in Pairs. Yeah, I would definitely pick up Mangara. I think he does a lot for the price. The next one I want to talk about is Repurposing Bay. So this is a card that lets you sacrifice an artifact to search your deck for an artifact that costs 1 more than the sacrifice artifact's mana value and put it into play. And when you compare this to something like Birthing Pod, which is a $20 card, now that's because it's never had a meaningful reprint outside of a Judge promo or the Secret Lair inclusion. And there are some other cards that do something similar, like Prime Speaker Vanifar is another Birthing Pod effect that can be in the command zone in Simic colors. And Oswald Fiddlebender does something very similar to Repurposing Bay, although admittedly Oswald does it a little less expensive. He's 1 less to get out, 1 less to activate his ability than the Repurposing Bay, and he's only like a $1.50, and the same for the Prime Speaker Vanifar. But Repurposing Bay is like a 50-cent card, and I think that is really too low, especially considering that we're going to be going to the Space Opera set later this year, which is going to have Tezzeret, and I can only assume that there's going to be a lot of artifact effects there. So I think that this is a great pickup at 50 cents. If you like tutoring for cards, if you've got specific pet artifacts that you run in your blue decks, I think this is a great way to get them out. I would definitely give that a consideration. Lethal Scheme is a card I have a particular soft spot for. I love Streets of New Capenna, and this is a removal spell with Convoke and Connive. So whenever a creature is used to convoke this spell, that creature connives. So if you tap 4 creatures, because the spell costs 4 mana, you get to connive 4 times and can go through 4 cards, potentially adding 4 counters onto your creatures. And this is just such a cool card because, like, let's say your opponent's attacking with 5 creatures. You can block with 4 creatures, let the big guy through that you're not going to block. And let's say that the blocks are like trades, right? You can then connive 4 times, draw 4, discard 4 non-land cards, and suddenly those 4 trades, you're winning all those combats because those creatures all got a +1 counter buff. And then the guy that got through, you're able to just kill it with the Lethal Scheme. So I really like the surprise factor of this card. It's a design space that WotC likes so much that they revisited in March of the Machines when they made Pile On, which is something similar. That's a 4-mana instant black kill spell with Convoke. The only difference is that instead of conniving, you just surveil 2. So I don't think it's quite as good as Lethal Scheme. The ceiling isn't as high on it of what you can get out of it. But Lethal Scheme has a lot going for it, and I really like it as a removal spell. And I'm not the biggest fan of free spells like Deadly Rollick. That's a $15, $18 card, and that's a 4-mana instant exile target creature, but you can play it for free if you control your commander. I just don't run any of those in any of my decks. I think those were a design mistake. I don't care for them. But convoking creatures, I consider that a fair way to get a free spell without having to pay any mana for it. So yeah, big fan of the lethal scheme, I think it's worth much more than its like 40-cent price tag. So I definitely encourage you to pick them up, try them in your black decks with creatures that you can tap down. One card I'm really interested in is the Great Train Heist. So this is from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. It's one of these spree cards. It has untap all creatures you control. If it's your combat phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. Now, it costs 1 to start with, but if you add 3, you get that effect of untapping your creatures, and then there's an additional combat phase. And so if you look, there's really only one other card in all of Magic that can do that. Instant speed, extra combat, untap your creatures in red. And that is Savage Beating. And to do that, it costs 5 mana. And that is a card that was $60 back in 2021. Now, it did go down in price, and after the Commander Masters reprint, it's sitting at around $10 or so for Savage Beating. But in addition to being able to get an extra combat, Savage Beating also lets you entwine it for 1 red and a colorless, and that gives all your creatures double strike as well. So then suddenly it's not just an extra combat, but it's an extra combat with double strike both times. Great Train Heist does not do that, but you can pay an extra 2, and then creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain first strike until end of turn. So instead of Savage Beating 7 mana to get an extra combat with double strike, Great Train Heist is having you pay 6 mana to get an extra combat with first strike. It's not quite as good, but it's not nothing. And if that were it, it'd be a pretty even comparison. But there's more to it. It also has a third cost, which you can add another red. It says choose target opponent. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to that player this turn, create a tapped treasure token. So in all of Magic, there's really not a lot of effects that do that. There's cards that let you create treasure tokens equal to the total damage one creature deals, like with the Reaver Cleaver. But the Great Train Heist can give you, X tap treasure tokens, where X is equal to the amount of creatures that deal damage to target player this turn. So if you've got a go-wide strategy and you're swinging with a bunch of Goblin tokens in like your Krenko deck or something, Great Train Heist can just generate absurd amounts of treasure tokens. Like Old Gnawbone can do that. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens, but he's also like a $60 card. The Indulge to Excess, speaking of the Streets of New Capenna commander decks, like Lethal Scheme was from, this card comes from there as well. And the Aftermath side of that has you create a treasure token for each creature you control that dealt combat damage to a player this turn. So again, like Old Gnawbone, the cards, the treasure tokens created off of Excess do come into play, do enter the battlefield untapped. But even with the treasure tokens coming into play tapped from the Great Train Heist, I still think it offers a lot of value and also a lot of flexibility too. If you don't care about the extra combat, if you don't care about the first strike, you can just pay red to just generate a whole ton of treasure tokens. I like how flexible it is. I like that it scales. I like it that you could even, if all you wanted to do was just not die, you can just pay 4 mana to just untap all your creatures on your opponent's turn. You've got surprise blockers. It's got a lot of flexibility. I think it's undervalued at its current price, around $1.50. It was up to $3.50, $4 a few months ago, but since dropped back down to here. And so I think it's a good card to pick up, especially at this price point. The last one I wanted to talk about was Spinner of Souls. So this is a Spider Spirit, 3 mana for a 4/3 with reach. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this card compares very favorably to Midnight Reaper and Grim Haruspex, which are both black cards that let you draw off of non-token creatures dying. Now, they both give you card advantage off of non-token creatures you control dying. The Midnight Reaper hits you for damage every time in addition to that. But they both give card draw. Spinner of Souls, I'd argue in some ways is better, because you're never going to draw a land off of it. You're always getting a creature. You're always getting something meaningful that you can play. And those creatures you're getting off of it fuel the next card draw. So you're just going through creatures in your deck. I think that, it's a 4/3 for 3 with reach. It's got a very good stat line, especially early game. You can deter a lot of early flying attackers with it. And this is the only kind of effect we've gotten like this in green ever. The only other colors up to this point that have done it for this low of a cost at this rate have been in black. So this is very new ground as far as it goes. And it's only a 50-cent card. Now, the Grim Haruspex and the Midnight Reaper aren't much more expensive. They're both at around $1 or a little less. but this is just a nice option if you want that effect and you're not playing black, or you want to run that in addition to those effects you're already playing in black. And just when looking over the Spinner of Souls, a couple of things that reminded me of is Foster. That's an enchantment for 4 mana from Mercadian Masks. And it's whenever a creature you control dies, you can pay 1. If you do, reveal cards on top of your library into a reveal a creature card, put that card in your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Now, funny enough, if you don't have any creature cards in your deck, like let's say it's just token creation, then when that token dies, you just pay 1. If there's no creatures in the deck, you just mill your entire library into your graveyard. So that could be a way to win off of that if you've got some sort of a combo that cares about that. But another card it reminded me of was Evolutionary Leap, and that's an enchantment for a green and a colorless. And so you pay a green, sacrifice a creature, reveal cards on the top of your library until you reveal a creature card, put that card into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, worth noting is that Foster and Evolutionary Leap, they don't care about the non-creature clause. You can do that with tokens. Sacrifice a creature token when a token dies with Foster, pay 1 to reveal until you get a creature. Evolutionary Leap, you can pay 1, sack a creature, even a token, to reveal cards on top of your library until you get a creature card, and it goes into your hand. And I just think about how many people are running Skull Clamp in their token decks, and you just at sorcery speed, paying 1 to equip, kill a token, draw 2 cards. It's a great rate. It's a busted card. But when you consider that Evolutionary Leap is only like 50 cents and Skull Clamp is like $5 or $6, no matter how many reprints it gets, I think Evolutionary Leap should definitely consider a look in token decks, because you can have your token chump block something and it's going to die anyways, so you can pay a green, sacrifice it at instant speed. You can't do that with Skull Clamp. You got to do that at sorcery speed on your turn. But Evolutionary Leap, you can just sack the creature in response to get a new creature into your hand. You're not drawing 2 cards off the top, you're drawing 1, but you're getting specifically a creature card. Same things as in response to removal. Somebody wants to remove one of your creatures, instead just sacrifice it to get a new card into your hand. I think it offers a lot of utility and is underplayed. Same thing with Spinner of Souls. I think that you're not having to keep mana open for it. It's just sort of a blanket. Every non-token creature that dies is, well, another, doesn't count itself, but every other non-token creature you control that dies, you're going to get that replaced into your hand with a new creature card. And so it's really tough for your opponents to effectively wipe your board and leave you without resources. So those are just a few of the cards I really like. I think a lot of them are undervalued, and pretty much all of these are under $1. Mangara is like 50 cents. Repurposing Bay is like 50 cents. Lethal Scheme, 50 cents. A Great Train Heist, that's the one that's breaking the bank at like $1.50 right now, down from $4. And then Spinner of Souls, again, also like 50 cents. So I think that these are some really inexpensive cards that you could pick up to run in your commander decks. I think they're going to do a lot of work. But thank you so much for listening. I'll have more cards to discuss in a future video. But take care and see you next video. Bye.